Hi everybody, this is an optional video on how to create compound curves into the earpieces for your sunglasses. Okay, so we're going to curve it both from the side view and the top view, which is a more realistic way for earpieces to be, but it's not necessary for this project if you don't want to do this. So here are my frames, okay, same place where we kind of left off in the last lesson. And instead of like going through step by step here, we're just going to kind of slide down my list, and I'm going to show you what I've done here. So the first thing I did is I created a sketch, and I based this sketch off of just like this 5.5-inch box that I created, and then I went through and I designed like the shape of my ear. Now remember, this 5.5-inch box it turned into construction line, so it doesn't bother me later on when I go to extrude. And I have like that object drawn. I've closed that object. You can tell it's closed because it's gray. So then from there, I went through and I extruded that thing. Okay? So here's my first extrusion where it just comes back straight. And again, for most people, or for if you wanted to, like, this would probably be fine. You still need to include like your hinge piece, but like it could be straight just like that, so that there's nothing wrong with that. From there, I started like drawing my hinge piece in, and I extruded that hinge piece up so that it created the centerpiece of my hinge. And then from there, what I did is I created, like, I just copied everything and I used that use button, okay? And one thing that I offset was I just left this straight, but I've used everything else on the inside of this object. And then I've created this line here, okay? And what I've done with that is I have further extruded like that section of my earpiece like way out. Like super far out. I think about 1/4 of an inch. If we take a look at my extrusion, we'll know for sure. Yeah, 1/4 of an inch out. Okay, so I've created that piece there, and then I went through and I created a plane. And again, this plane, let's turn that visibility on. This plane I just offsetted from my top plane, and I just created this plane like above my glasses in general. And again, this is a flat plane that we're going to be able to create a sketch on, like sketch number 7. So when I look, let's go to the top. When I look at my sketch number 7, I used the use tool again, and I projected all of the surfaces of my arm to that plane, right? And you can notice that like that line that I originally drew down here, that just creates this like step. I'm not going to be editing what is in my beginning part here. And with that, I started to just start drawing in these arcs that get drawn across. Let's look at this thing from the top in totality here. I started to create these arcs that went back starting at the front corner, actually at this corner here, and coming back. And you can see that, like in this case, although originally in my video I said that it was 0.0625, in this version of my drawing it's 0.08 is the thickness of my arms. And that's like the same dimension as if I were to measure between here and here. That's 0.08 as well. So I brought back 2 arcs, and in my case I just dimension both of those with a radius of 50 inches, right? So it's a diameter of 100 inches, which means that if I created a circle with a 100-inch diameter, it would follow the same arc. So because both of these radiuses are the same, and because they both start and end at the same point relative to one another, at 0.08 inches away from each other, they're parallel throughout the entire process. And then when I go through and extrude, it's not that thing in the middle that I'm extruding, it's everything around it that I'm cutting away, right? So make sure you have a box around the outside here. So when we finish this thing up and we move on to extrusion number 7, you can see that extrusion number 7, I selected all of those surfaces but what was left in between there. All right? And I'm cutting that away, and I'm cutting through all, so I can click the checkbox. And now I have that earpiece being drawn like that. I put a fillet on like the outside of my earpiece. And then I mirrored that earpiece over to the left side, creating a new object. Okay, so this is my that's my left earpiece, and then my new part over here is my right earpiece. And then I still have my frame. And then I went through later on and I created my pin, and I extruded, or my screw, you know, whatever you're creating. And I extruded that pin out. And again, I'm only going to draw one pin because when I assemble this later on, I will drop that same pin in over here as well. Okay, so that's how you can create like a compound curve where you have curves going both in my case they're going in like 1/4 of an inch, and curves on the side all on the same piece.